Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Ruby Rogues podcast. This week on our panel, we have Ayush Newatia.
Hello, hello.
I'm Charles Maxwood from Top End Devs. Man, it feels like it's been a while since we've recorded one of these, doesn't it, Ayush?
Yeah, it's been a few months. Feels ages. That time's just been flying for me. So it's all gone by quite quickly, but it's nice to be back.
Yeah, definitely. For those of you who are listening and going, didn't you release one like last week or the week before? Well, there were a few things that happened. I'm just going to fill you all in. I don't know if you need all the inside baseball, but it's interesting, and then I'll introduce our guests. I wound up getting a job at Prize Picks at the end of March. I also hired my daughter to be putting the episodes out, and she didn't. And so I fired her. I had to fire my own kid. And so Jib, who's our editor, took over posting the shows. And so he went and found all the ones that hadn't been posted and started posting them again. So the gap that you all as listeners saw was probably back in like April, right? There was like a month in March or April that you didn't see episodes. So you're getting episodes that we recorded a month or 2 or 3 ago. And now we're kind of back at it and recording episodes again. So anyway, your gap is different from ours. So, but it feels so good to just get back and talk about the stuff we love. And we've got 2 terrific guys who are here, who are working on a very interesting project. We have Adrien Poli and
Hello.
Marco Roth.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think I'm the only one of you guys that's not in Europe. So thanks for coming in the evening or afternoon, whenever it is there. And so I reached out because I ran across a really interesting project. It's Ruby Video or RubyVideos.dev. Which one is it?
It started as a Ruby video, and like 2 months ago, we decided to rebrand it for a bigger picture under the RubyEvents.org, as the project has more ambitions, but we can dive a bit more into the details, and that's later on.
Yeah, makes sense. So when you started, I'm kind of curious, what was the vision?
It was several things occurred at the same time. First, I visited a similar project in the Python world that is called T-Video or something like this, which is a website that indexes something like 15,000 Ruby Python videos of conference and so on. And I was looking at something similar in the Ruby industry, and I couldn't find anything. Of course, you can always go to YouTube or Google search and search for whatever things you need, but I couldn't find a single place where you could search for a specific topics and get all the conference on that particular topics in the Ruby industry. So at that time, I was interested to test several things that were coming out. That there was Camel, there was this SQLite trends, and I wanted to build something. So I started to build a small website that started with, I think, 800 videos, mostly RailsConf, RubyConf, and so on. That was the proof of concept, the first proof of concept, so largely inspired by Python video. And it had a bit of traction at the beginning when it was announced. Of course, it was open source. And very quickly, Marco joined the venture and came. Marco was also maintaining Ruby conference. If you want to add more details on this, maybe Marco?
Yeah, so I was maintaining rubyconferences.org, which used to be this simple website where you can add, or where you can see all the conferences that are happening in the Ruby world.
I use that all the time, by the way. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, what's
well,
coming up and where can I submit calls for proposals and stuff? So yeah, thanks for that.
yeah, that's been like going for a long time. I have been just trying to bring it up to date and kind of kept adding these new events that I saw coming on. But then I realized that they also had like video links to YouTube playlists and all these other like topics they had on the website. And then we decided to add meetups, and then we were like, yeah, let's maybe redesign this web page because it does look dated in a way. So we wanted to kind of add more features to it, but it kept kind of like the ideas kept growing, and I couldn't really
Mhm.
find a good way to make it happen on this Jekyll website. And at the same time, then Ruby Video came around, and I was like, oh, actually, this is very much like what I kind of had envisioned for Ruby conferences to be. And that's why I decided to kind of join forces with Adrien to kind of make this one website or kind of contribute to Ruby Video to make this the thing that I wanted Ruby conferences to be. And that's kind of what ties into this rebrand that we did a few months ago, where we want to bring these two websites together as one. This is going to be RubyEvents.org, and that's in the future where you will find all the upcoming events, previous events, and even if you are at the event at the moment, you can see the schedule and all of that. So it's kind of just the place to go for anything Ruby events related.
Nice. Ayush, do you have questions? Because I've got a ton. I don't want to.
I have a ton as well. Why don't you continue? I'll jump in as and when.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm kind of curious. So you decide you want this website, and I think the closest thing we've had in the past was Confreaks used to host all the videos from all the conferences that they recorded, but I went and looked and I couldn't find them anymore, and I don't know what the story is there, if I'm just not doing the right Google search or whatever. But anyway, so you start putting the site together, and I mean, how were you finding the videos? Were you just embedding them from YouTube, and were there any challenges that you ran into kind of pulling this together?
Yeah, for now we don't host any videos, so we just index them. So we mostly find them on YouTube because that's where
Mm-hmm.
mostly events are hosting their videos. A few do host them by themselves, like Brighton. I think Brighton is an
Okay.
example for something quite recent. Um, but mostly it's YouTube
Okay.
video. So we do get the metadata from YouTube. We there has been a very big work, and Marco contributed a lot on this to build this all of those YAML file that will describe all the metadata for all the talks, all the events with
Uh-huh.
all their links and so on, with the correct speakers, the correct description. Lots of cleaning of the metadata has been done.
So do you import it and then clean it up by hand, or do you go find the videos that you want and then just capture all that information somehow, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we have a few what we call metadata parsers, and
Uh-huh.
some events have the same structure in the title of how they arrange their titles. So we can kind of do some smart logic by splitting on the word by or by dashes or
Mhm.
commas. And then you get there like 90% of the way. And then there's like some left over to do where you just go in and clean it up by hand. But I guess this could also be improved in the future now that we have LLMs and all of that to be
Mhm.
more automated. But for now, this has been proven to work out really well.
Right. And you said that you have it all in YAML files. So when there's a new conference, I was kind of assuming it was built on like Rails or Hanami and had a database behind it, but is this more along the lines of something like Jekyll or Bridgetown or something where, maybe you say, hey, my data's in these files, and so I'm just, I just build every time I get a new conference?
Yeah, so for now it is a Rails app and it has a database.
Okay.
But what we do is that we go through all the YAML files and import them into the database, just so we have a nicer interface to query the data and kind of
That makes sense.
have speakers profiles and event pages. So it's just easy to query and kind of build the websites around them. So they are all dynamically generated on the server side and then served using the traditional Rails request response cycle.
Gotcha. And I guess the other question I have is, are you mostly focused on conferences, or are you looking to do things with like meetups, or if somebody puts up a good tutorial or something like that? Those are all videos that you may or may not want to pull in. I guess tutorials aren't events, but meetups are.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why I personally also wanted to move away from Ruby Video, because this was meant to be focused on events, which also includes meetups, and we have a few meetup groups on there too. And not all the meetups are recording videos for their events and talks, which is also the other thing that I want to get away from Ruby Video, because we want to still index all the talks that are happening at these meetups, even if they have no recording to it. But so that you can add them, add the titles, add descriptions, add the metadata, add some of the slides if they have them available, or some of the resources like reposts, that you can still see that this talk and event took place at this time by the speaker, and this is all the information we know about it as well.
Okay.
But that's the thing, like with tutorials, I think this is something that's harder to index in that sense that it keeps, like, it stays relevant, which I think this is still really good on YouTube or anywhere else where you host these tutorials. So I personally don't see, at least in the near term, that we kind of host these tutorials on Ruby events as well.
Okay.
So I wonder if we could dig into this technicals a little bit, because you guys have built an actual production website using SQLite and some new Rails features like solid queue. And also, I think it's the first website that I can definitely remember has used page view transitions. So, in terms of all these technologies in an actual app, what was your experience like?
Yeah, as I said, when I started to build, I love to build things, but I, I am an engineer, so I'm an engineer builder. So whenever I try to build something new, it always has to be a way for me to discover, test some new technologies. So real builders will use proven tech, and they just focus on the product, the feature, and so on. So for me, as I said, when I had this initial idea of Ruby video, there were several technology that all came out and I wanted to try. And page view transition was one of the technology that I really wanted to try on. They had this demonstration where there is the same effect when you click on the small thumbnail of a video, then it's zoom up, and you get this nice transition from the index to the show view. Uh, and I think that's really cool. At the same time, I had this feeling that in the Rails industry, always with the same topics, Rail is dying and so on. A lot of the impression that Rail was old comes from some websites built on Rails that have some old look. They are not modern. The backend is great, but the front end is built by backend developers. And I wanted also this website to be some kind of flagship, and that demonstrates that we can build we can get a nice UX and UI with Rails. You don't need React, you don't need whatever front end framework to do this. And there are lots of technology available nowadays with page view transition, with Tailwind, and some component libraries that you can use to get something that is nice.
Yeah, it looks great. I was quite impressed with just how clean and simple the design is, which is awesome. Um, does the page view transitions API hooks into Turbo Drive, doesn't it?
When I started the project. It wasn't available with Turbo Drive, so I use a package. I don't recall the name.
Turn, I think it was called.
Yes, exactly. That provide the bridge between Turbo and page view transition. Since then, page view transition has been built into Turbo, so now it's a native feature.
Cool. And how was this the first time you'd used SQLite on a production app, or had you used it before?
For me, it was the first time. Yes.
And how did you find that change from, I'm guessing, Postgres that you'd used in the past? Was it a big change in terms of thinking and designing, or was it pretty much seamless?
I would say it was seamless in terms of developer experience. What is nice is that doing a backup or if we need to dump some database, it's just a single file that you need to move. Combined with Kamal and a small VPS hosting made the things amazingly cheap to host. That was, I mean, compared to Heroku or whatever pass, where you always end up with at a minimum of €50 per month, so we could divide this almost by 10 and get better performance out of it. So the
Now you're
performance
speaking my language. I love that. I love that. Because yeah, I've had the same experience with Kamal and some of those tooling. So
it's yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say that it was always perfect, and that I sometimes spent more time than I should have learning all of those Kamal settings and so on. But that's something that I wanted to do also as part of like growing experience, so that it was okay for me to spend some time on this. But I'm not sure how you feel, Marco, about it. But for me, the experience with with SQLite has been amazing. I mean, the speed, the API. There is nothing that I couldn't do up to now that I'm able to do in Postgres or whatever other database.
Yeah, it's been similar experience for me. I didn't really have any problems with adapting from coming from Postgres mostly. Pretty much everything worked as I expected it to work, and also from the query speed and all of that, it didn't really make any difference for me on how I build apps. But I think this is mostly also thanks to Active Record that does the heavy lifting for us in the back.
Yeah, we had for the full text search to do a bit more integration. I guess that this will with Rails 8.1 should be mostly covered with something official, from what I understood, but it's not yet really. We don't know exactly the boundaries, but now we have a full text search that is performed by SQLite, and that works quite nicely.
Did you have to change your database schema to be a SQL file instead of an RB file, or is that something that they fixed? Because I knew until like a couple of years ago, if you wanted to do full text search with SQLite, you couldn't have a schema.rb. It had to be a structure.sql. Is that something they've changed now?
I think so, because we are still using the RB schema.
Okay, great. That's good to know.
so have you thought about doing like a semantic search of some kind on there, or
Yes, the very first version of Ruby Video, I used Melisearch that
uh-huh.
was next to SQLite, because I think at that time, full text search, it was probably possible with SQLite, but either I couldn't find up-to-date tutorial or things that were built in Ruby. At that time, SQLite was still a bit something new in the Rails world for building a production website. So I started to use mail search, and we did some proof of concept for doing semantic search and similar topics, similar finding similar talks to one talks by we created some embeddings and so on. That's something that we didn't push to production yet, but I'm really interested to work on this feature in the upcoming months or so. That's really something where I think we can improve the overall discoverability of the content.
Yeah, I've played with it some, mostly using vector stuff with either Elasticsearch or Postgres, and
Yeah.
I mean it's cool stuff, and it works out because then you can, if I don't put in exactly the term that a full text search would, miss on, it can figure out what I'm looking for and kind of give it to me anyway. So
It's definitely something that we'll want to improve to get some semantic search.
So what other things are you looking to add to it? It sounds like you're going to merge the rubyconferences.org and rubyevents.org. Do you have other ideas of things that you want to add to this or bring into it, or do you have kind of a limited scope that keeps it simple?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch we can do and a bunch of stuff we want to do, but then again, it's kind of tricky to build out all these features and make it work, especially because Ruby conferences that didn't really have a lot of metadata around any of the events. It was pretty much the name, the dates, and the location.
Right.
And now on Ruby events, we have the speakers, the talks, all descriptions. So it's not just a one-to-one copy that we can take over and then it's good. So we are looking on ways to bring over all the events. We have the events indexed now, but I have no speakers and no talks attached to them. So that would be one thing, to just go back to all these events and to try to add all these old talks. So you have the data for it. But also then looking at the future, having attended a bunch of conferences in the last few years, I noticed that the people that are organizing these events struggle with just the whole workflow as well. And one of the aspects of that is also the call for papers and finding the right platforms to host it. It seems to be quite an issue that's quite expensive for conference organizers to just be able to host a CFP. So we were also looking into ways to make it easier to have like a full process for conference organizers to go from announcing the event up until the point to releasing the videos, to have like this full workflow on, let's announce the CFP, let's collect the proposals, let's finish it up, then let's publish the schedule, let's publish the actual talk titles, let's publish the event as I think that's happening. Then during the event, maybe there's some updates, maybe there's just the currently the talk that's currently running, and then after the talk, after the event, you then get the recordings attached to the same talks. So just to kind of have this full experience on for conference organizers, but also for attendees, to have this one interface and platform where you can just go to and find the information you need. Another aspect also was to add photos, official photos from the event, but also from social media. So if you use like the conference hashtag, that we show these photos right next to the event itself and give some more impressions of what the event was like from people that attended the event or were talking about the event in some way or another, just to kind of bring the whole community aspect together. Especially now when we have this social media breakup where everybody is just on some social platform, but not everybody is on the same platform. But at least with these Ruby events, that we have one place where we see the stuff that we want to learn from, at least for the engineering part of our careers.
Nice. And with this, like just in terms of like running this project, do you guys always see it always as a passion project, or do you reckon you might look for sponsorship or some other kind of revenue model in the future? Because if you're going to do something like come up with a whole workflow for conferences to run CFPs and stuff, that seems like quite a lot to do just for fun.
I mean, I haven't really thought about how you would monetize it. I'm sure there are ways to do it. But then again, in the terms of community, it doesn't really seem to make sense to just monetize the whole platform for that. So at least for me, I plan it to be for it to be a passion project, and that continues to be the case. And but maybe Adria has another view about this.
No, no. I mean, for me, it's always always wanted it to be and to remain a passion project. So that's also one of the reason where I know that we have lots of ideas of what we can do, but I mean, we also have day jobs, and so it has to remain a passion project. And so things might not arrive tomorrow. It might take a bit more time, but we are doing it this with our little hands and some help of the community also. There has been a lot of contributors, lots of very interesting contribution from various person. Maybe some person that you met, Marco, but I think also some person that came naturally to the repo and suggested some nice improvements.
Yeah, the only other like aspect that I could see this making some money, or at least to account for the cost of running it, would be, so we want to add sponsors anyway. We want to kind of index all the sponsors that have sponsored an event and give them a profile page too, to say this company sponsored all these events and that's what they kind of gave back to our community. Also, that it's more interesting for companies to sponsor events, not just for the duration of the events or leading up to it, that you can see their names, but also in this archive to say these are the companies that made this event possible. And maybe there are some companies that would love to still help out or kind of have the name on the platform to say we support the Ruby community in that way. And I could see that kind of work out, but I don't see it's being monetized in a way for you to access any of the information or running a call for papers or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a natural thing. So I've been working on a side project that it does index the conferences, but it also indexes like gems and tutorials, and lets people know when the meetups are coming up, and basically it's like an all-in-one directory for anything having to do with Ruby. Turns out it's probably a lot more work than what you guys are doing, but that was what I was looking at too, was just it's like, hey, this naturally fits in here where you're looking at error handling tools, right, for dev tools under dev tools, and so then you'd have that banner there because somebody paid to kind of have their banner or be at the top of the list or something like that. And so I think something like this makes a lot of sense in your case too. Yeah, where somebody is, you're not gatekeeping any content, you're just making
Yeah,
people aware, hey, they sponsored this video, and you can find them here, and it just kind of extends whatever it was that they got from the conference.
exactly. Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious, and I guess I could probably go look this up, but how many conferences have you indexed and put onto the website?
Um, there are 540 conferences on the website right now,
Oh wow.
and I think there are around 250 that have actual talks attached to them.
Okay.
So there's still like half of them don't have any like talks attached to them, but there's still a lot of data already on the platform itself.
Mm-hmm.
And that
So how?
represents 7,210 talks.
That's what I was going to ask. How many
Yeah.
talks? 7,000 plus talks. That's
And
amazing.
almost 3,500 speakers.
Wow.
Yes,
And
serious
that's
companies.
also a nice feature of Ruby events is that speakers have their own page
Hmm.
where we get some information from their GitHub profile, and also will list all of their talks. They can, if they connect with GitHub, then they can get a little mark that will certify their profile, and they can do some small edits to the content on their profile. But we start to have, that's lots of speakers. Some it's interesting when you discover a speaker and that you can also see what other talks he gave. So that's brings a lot of serendipity into the search experience with the whole content.
Nice. Yeah, I
And
found Ayush's page, and yeah.
Yeah, I went looking for my own page in a very narcissistic way as well.
Did you
I haven't
claim?
spoken.
Yeah,
Oh, it says right there, claim your profile.
yeah.
I also found this.
Oh,
Uh,
you've got my old stuff in here.
there you go.
Wow.
I'm looking for your page now, Chuck. Where
In
is it?
Yeah, the
2010,
most recent
20,
talk
Yeah, I
in there
found it.
from me is from 2013. It was a Ruby Rogues panel. I did, I did some other talks, but
oh, RasConf 2015 also, but I think it's with your middle name there, so it's just Charles Wood, which has another talk in 2015.
oh, okay.
Yeah. We
I
have
do
a
plan
lot
on
of
speaking more, so you may see other stuff pop up if you're wondering. But
Sweet.
oh
I
yeah,
also found the topic section where you can jump into a topic and see all the talks that fit under that, which I think is super cool. But just curious about how you tagged each talk with a number of topics. Was it a manual process, or do you use like LLMs or something like that for it?
Yeah, it's LLM based. Um, we it's we try to once we get the metadata from for the talks, those YAML file, we ingest them into the SQLite database, and then we try to enhance those metadata. First, if we can get the transcript of the talk, we'll add the transcript to our database. We'll do a first cleaning of the transcript because most of the time the transcript that we get are not so accurate, and we run them through a first AI agent that will produce something that is much cleaner, not perfect but cleaner. Out of this we build a small summary of the talk where you can get I don't know, like the main key points that are covered during this talk. And then out of this, the transcript and the summary, we feed this to an LLM with the existing topics that we have because we try to avoid doing too much duplication. Doesn't work perfectly, but it does a bit. And then this will create the taggings. So in a perfect world, of course, would like to get some more manual tagging, but it wasn't given the amount of talks we had and all the history that we needed to cover the backlogs. The DLM really help us improve, do this very quickly.
are
And
you?
yeah,
You were talking about the cost of running this. Are you paying for the LLM that you're accessing, or are you running something like Olama on your own thing, on your own server?
it's mostly OpenAI tokens. So
Okay.
and frankly speaking, yes, I'm paying for this, but I think I probably put like $20 US, or I don't know. It's
Okay. So you haven't
It's
spent a ton. I've seen
no,
those costs go up, up, up when people use some of those models. So
yeah, no. For now, the models that we are using for topics and summarize, those things are pretty standard.
uh-huh.
Those are the cheap models of.
I was gonna say you're not paying for the most recent expensive models.
Well, they are recent, but they are not the largest one.
Right.
Uh,
Okay.
and okay, we have 7,000 videos. It's not that much neither. So we don't ingest thousands of video every day. So the cost remains
Oh
okay.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I haven't counted exactly, but it's something that I can afford. Definitely. I don't need to find a business model yet for this part.
Sounds good.
I wonder if you guys want to switch gears a little bit and just talk a little bit about stimulus, because you guys are both core maintainers of that, and is that something you want to discuss?
You mean like Sims in general, or in the context of Ruby
In
events?
general, and in the context of the website, I guess.
Sure. I mean, yeah.
Um, so the setup of Hotwire in terms of governance is a bit strange, because like Rails has a core team and an issues team and a committers team. It's all fairly clear. With Hotwire and the constituent libraries, things seem a bit unclear. What is your impression and experience about being maintained as a stimulus, where uh, in slightly less of a democratic governance structure? I guess from my point of view, 37 Signal still holds the keys essentially.
I mean, yeah. From my perspective, it always was that I helped out with triaging issues, trying to respond to issues, trying to see if I can bring in some of the small changes that are like no brainers to merge. For bigger features, it was always just me proposing some features, and then somebody from the actual company would then merge those pull requests. So it wasn't that we were kind of steering the whole direction of the framework. It was just us trying to, or at least me trying to help out in some ways that is straightforward to just do when you kind of sit down for a few minutes and look at these issues that were coming in.
Yeah, I think it's really the same thing on my side. Mostly trying to help. Um, I would say that my involvement into this stimulus repo in the past months, years has been way less than what it could have been a few years ago. But I think it's also in general, I'm writing way less stimulus controllers since Hotwire in general. I don't know if this is something you might be feeling too, but we with Hotwire and the thermal streams and Morph and so on, lots of the things that in the past would require some stimulus controllers are now somehow already included into Turbo and Hotwire. So I'm using way less stimulus in general.
Yes,
I'll
same
chime in
here.
and I'll say that that's my experience as well. Initially, when they came out with stimulus, it was like, this is a breath of fresh air, and I can just put this where I want. And yeah, then I have to give credit to Ayush, because I was reading his book and I figured out that Turbo did a whole bunch of other things for me that I liked. And so yeah, I've been writing a lot less stimulus and just using Turbo streams mostly.
Now about the governance, yeah, we know it's a 37 signal repo. They have the final decision on this. I mean, Besides stimulus, there is with Marco we built stimulus use, which at that time the idea was okay, stimulus, because at that time stimulus was even more frozen. It was really a frozen project. The idea was really to get something done and keep it like this. But we felt in the community that we needed some more tools around stimulus. So uh, there were no way to get those tools into the core product. There were no real plugin capabilities. And that's where Stimulus Use brought this pattern and this API where you could add to your Stimulus controllers some new features and some new capabilities with an API that was almost feeling like you added some plugins to your Stimulus controllers. And that was a way to somehow keep the stimulus and all their decision and their like this and build something that could fit into this model.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's just one of the things you gotta live with stimulus. I guess it is what it is. I'm glad that you guys put in the effort to try and keep things going as much as possible. But yeah, with Turbo taking over so much of the heavy lifting, um, yeah, you only left to really use stimulus for like tiny bits where you need client side interactivity, I guess. Um, so you're connecting that back to Ruby events. Was there anything big or heavy that you felt you absolutely needed stimulus for in on that website? And if you didn't have stimulus, what do you think you would have used?
I think the biggest piece that we have on stimulus use on Ruby events is the video player for the like playing the actual videos. I think there's some logic around that where we have to embed some plugin or some player. In our case, it's Vite. And that's what we had to just wrap up in a stimulus controller to make it work. But I think that's pretty much like the biggest thing we have. There are like around 15 or 20 controllers. It's not that many. Most of them are super small and tiny and super specific for one use case in the app. So it's not that it actually makes heavy use of stimulus. I think but that's the other thing. I think that's just a testament also to Turbo now that you can do so much with Turbo. We've had having to go back and write stimulus controls yourself. And if you do, they are super small and straightforward to write. So I think that's really the key here. The other thing about stimulus as well is I think that it is also considered done, right? That doesn't. I don't really think there's too much that we have to add to the core itself that you cannot achieve otherwise. And with that and having stimulus use next to it, I think at least for my use cases, it has always been more than enough. And I guess for the other question, for what I would use if I wouldn't kind of write stimulus, it would probably be web components. Honestly, I think they have been very underrated the last few years. You can achieve very similar outcomes with some basic classes that you write that are web components. And there's this other project from GitHub which is inspired by Stimulus, which I always forget the name of that framework, but is almost like Stimulus, but you for web components. So you write web components that have targets that have components that are controls in the same yeah. And if I wouldn't write Stimulus, I would probably use that framework or just pure web components.
Yeah, I got to look up that framework because I love web components. Like, if I don't have stimulus available, which is usually if I'm doing like a static site, probably using Bridgetown, then I don't bother pulling in stimulus because it's a bit too much. So then I usually use web components, and yeah, I love them.
Mm.
They're web standard. They just seem to work out of the box quite nicely. So yeah, big fan of those.
Yeah.
One
Yeah,
other thing that I would think about reaching for is if I didn't have Turbo, I'd be looking at HTMX.
Yes.
Yeah, HMX is
And
also interesting because it also feels it's way more lower level than Turbo. So you have to kind of write a lot more or more explicitly what you want to do, which is personally what I dislike about it. But I guess if you couldn't use Turbo, it would still be better than the alternatives.
Yeah.
yeah, I have the same complaint. I like that you can just pull in Turbo and suddenly all your links are magically using Turbo Drive. I don't want to be sitting and writing data attributes for every single one to make it work. So yeah, similar complaint on HTMX. And my experience with Stimulus has also been like what you mentioned, the very small controllers doing very specific things. In your opinion, do you think Stimulus should have a standard library that provides a lot of these small things that are commonly done?
Yeah, for some time I was feeling that there is a need for that. But I feel like the more I've written Stimulus, the less I think that's actually the case. And I also quite dislike the idea of importing whole stimulus control from some packages because usually it's not the JavaScript part that is annoying to write. It's usually the markup, and without the markup next to the controller, it is pretty much useless. So I don't think it really makes sense to have predefined controllers that you just import and use because yeah, it depends on the markup. If you had some way to kind of share markup and controllers, then maybe. Um, but I think then again, that's kind of where we are with web components. That's pretty much what that is. You import one element, it has the behavior attached to it, and it's like isolated. And that's kind of what you use. And but if you don't use that, then I think that's what Stimulus uses actually really good at too, because you have these common behaviors that you can use with these hooks. You just import these hooks that you kind of want, and then you get that behavior, but you don't get ready-made controls that you just import and use.
Yeah, at some point I thought that rather than some standard libraries, it would have been more interesting to get some places where you can basically copy paste some standard stimulus controllers. Um, because also my experience has been that I never really like to import a stimulus component from a library. I prefer to have the code because we are usually talking about what 20, 50, 100 lines of code maximum in a stimulus controller. What's the point to import this from a package rather than having this into your project directly? So I prefer to copy and paste directly the code and get my own controller.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you there. There's stimulus-components.com that has a bunch of these that pull in other libraries and things. And every time I've tried to use them, eventually I'm just like, I needed to do something slightly off from what this does out of the box. And even doing the kind of inheritance thing that they tell you you can do with it, it still doesn't quite jive. And so, yeah, I wind up going and finding their source code, copying it into my thing, and then going, all right, now I can make it do what I want. And
Exactly.
it's almost always simple enough to where, yeah, I can just reach in and go, that changes and that changes and that changes, and I'm good.
Yeah, the framework I was mentioning earlier is called Catalyst from GitHub. That's what I meant. Yeah.
It's called Catalyst. Okay,
Yes.
interesting. Need to check that out for sure.
All right. Well, anything else that we want to delve into here? I mean, we've been going for 51 minutes.
I guess one thing that I want to just mention as well is that we have built some mobile apps too now with Hotwire Native that we just want to kind of get out there. So if you are at these events, that you can pull it up and see the schedule and maybe bookmark some of these talks that you want to check out later if you miss them in person or just want to revisit them. And that's kind of the other thing that I think is really nice about this whole ecosystem that we have now, that everything is in one place and you just need this one app for these events. And previously, I've seen some conferences have their own app or their own PWAs that you have to install. And at least with this, it would be this one place where the community can focus on and contribute data to, and then you have it on the go as well.
And what
Nice.
is great is that this is under the Ruby events org on GitHub, and you have the web part that is open source, but also the two mobile app, iOS and Android, are both open source projects. So that's also a very nice place to learn those technology. I mean, I wouldn't say that we are providing perfect code, but at least it's real projects that are live in production and that you can look at the code.
Awesome. I didn't know that was a native app. So is that downloadable from the app stores?
Yes.
Awesome.
So you just look for Ruby events, and it'll come
Yeah.
up.
That's it. Yes.
Awesome.
So I guess just as a last technical question for me about the website, just around the choices. I've been a fairly vocal critic of Tailwind CSS. I'm curious to understand why you guys are using it. Is this something you like? And also, how come you're using Vite, and how you pronounce it, instead of ES build or something like that? Just curious about those two choices.
Can talk about Tailwind, and maybe Marco, you'll talk about Vite.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tailwind thing, and it's not only using Tailwind, but also it's using a set of components from Daisy UI that provides some kind of, it's a bit the bootstrap kind of components that we used to have in the bootstrap days, but built for Tailwind. So we use that. I mean, it's good in the sense that we didn't have to make too much decision, and things were already pre-packaged. I know that we had some cases where tweaking some components was harder than expected. Marco had some quite a bit of struggle with some component, I remember. We haven't migrated yet. We have a PR open to migrate to Tailwind 4 and Daisy UI 5. It should bring more flexibility because we don't have to import the entire Daisy UI components. We can just pick the one that we'll want. So that will be a nice improvement. Now, why Tailwind versus other things is probably I'm more familiar to use Tailwind nowadays than using standard CSS, but that's I don't have strong opinion on this.
I like Tailwind, so I live in your camp.
Yeah, it feels like it's the de facto standard at this point, at least in the wider web community, that this is what you use. But I can also see how you dislike it, especially if these classes get super long and you have to think about how you break it up. But I think it's still better to have these complexity at least in one place in the components themselves, not like littered around the whole app. And yeah.
We do use View component a bit. We should use it more. We have some places where we know that we would need to refactor a bit, like the user the speaker thumbnails and so on. So we know that we have some lots of duplicates that we could refactor, but we do use View component, and when you combine View components with Tailwind, that makes it quite nice to get your design system, the basic building blocks.
Yep. Yeah, I've done that too. I will admit that I have moved back away from view components, and I just put all my stuff in partials. But it's the same idea, right? Where it's okay. I know I'm going to have a text field or an avatar or something like that, and so I just have a standard partial for it, and just pull it in and give it what it needs.
Yeah, it's view components can be heavy-handed. I just like them because when you need a little bit more logic there, instead of
Hmm.
putting it in helpers, I think the view component helps. But yeah, I think for a majority of use cases, partials would do just fine. It's just that little bit extra I think that view component gives you is useful, but definitely don't need it for every project.
I think
Um,
that's a good way to put it, right? Because that's the trade off is that, yeah, you can just hand in the objects that it needs in order to figure out what to do. Whereas with the partials, you kind of have to finesse it a little bit and put some of that, more of that into the helpers, which
mm,
aren't always as targeted as the view component class, which is essentially like a presenter. And so, yeah, I see the trade offs. I really do like the view components. I just kept running into funny things with some of it, or it felt like it was overkill for some of the simple stuff. And so, um, yeah, but that idea I've used extensively where, yeah, it's okay. I've got all my Tailwind stuff in the view component or the partial. And so it always looks the same because I always just reach for it when I'm putting that in.
Yeah, and I
um,
guess as for the Vite question, I think it's really from coming from the Webpack days and where you had the Webpack dev server running, like as a separate process. You really got that nice developer experience where you update the files and you don't have to reload the page every time. So just like this whole experience from hot reloading to adding
Mhm.
dependencies to integration with the asset pipeline, it just feels like a well like rounded up package that you just include and works. There's no configuration, there's nothing you have to kind of make work. And with ES build, it doesn't really handle images, it doesn't really handle style sheets, I think. Maybe it doesn't now, but I'm not quite sure. So it's really just this package of you just included no configuration and you got all the nice benefits that you don't get with import maps, but also don't really get with ES build. You can get some of that with ES build too, but then you have to write your custom like watching mechanism to make sure that you reload the pages. But that feels always so hacky compared to just using Vite. And yeah, Vite has focused on developer experience and just using that tool as it is without some custom Rails wrapper logic magic. It really feels nice as it should be.
Yeah, I've used both. The thing that I miss when I use import maps is the hot reloading of all the things. You don't have to do hardly any work to make it work with Vite. The flip side is that I like having I feel like import maps is more flexible, and I can see where everything's coming from. Vite tends to, at least in the way I had it set up, it was building out one file in production for the JavaScript and compressing everything together, and that made it a little hard to follow sometimes.
You mean like for debugging, like in the
Yeah.
browser when
Hmm.
it's not okay?
Yep.
Hmm.
Those are the trade-offs that I saw. Um, I have to say that between, given the two options, I've kind of leaned more toward import maps, but I mean, I don't know that I have that much more advantage. And the hot reloading, like you said, is so nice. So I don't know. I don't have a strong feel on this one, but there are things to like about both.
Yeah, the other thing I like about Vite as well is if you have a syntax error or some like missing dependencies or some missing or wrong imports, it will tell you right away with an overlay and say, here's what's wrong on this line. And with import maps, you pretty much get no feedback at all.
That's
Like you
true.
are
It
lucky
catches it
to
on the
know.
build. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just this little bit more that you get with Vite. But obviously, there's more complexity behind the scenes, which is also what
Hmm.
makes it less attractive, I guess.
For import maps, you can get hot reloading now with Hotwire Spark. It's a new
You just
project.
made my day.
It's
Here's a virtual hug, Adrien. My life is better now.
uh, I've not used it yet, really, because I'm not really using import maps.
Hmm.
But from what I understood of the project that is made, it's a Hooray who built it from 37 Signals. I think they are using it mostly internally at 37 Signal because they are mostly import maps shop. It does work well with import maps and stimulus controller. Then when you have something a bit more exotic, then you might not have the full refresh and so on. But you can give
Yeah.
this a try.
Well, if it'll do that, then why the heck are you using Vite? No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know. For me, the import maps has always been more trouble than solutions. But it's probably that I didn't spend enough time getting through the learning curve. I don't know. Also, in my day job, we have more. I mean, import maps, I think, works great when you have a very limited amount of external dependencies that you will get. So if you mostly have your own stimulus controllers with very few external dependencies, it's probably quite easy to manage. But as soon as you want to pull in some libraries with their own CSS and so on, then the whole thing becomes way less easy.
Yeah, sometimes.
So yeah, so yeah, for me it never really clicked up to now, but who knows?
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and push us into our picks. Our picks is our final segment of the show. If you've listened before, you know we just shout out stuff that we like. If you haven't listened before, we just shout out stuff that we like. And so I'll have Ayush go first, and then I will do picks, and then you guys do picks.
Right. So, well, I spent quite a lot of May chasing my favorite musician around Europe. I think it was like 20 plus date tour. I went for 9 shows because I'm a bit mad. So I was around Europe and then the UK.
Wow.
So I have to pick him. So Steven Wilson, check out his new album, The Overview. It's ridiculous. It's 2 songs of 23 minutes and 18 minutes. So it's completely nuts. It's like something out of the 70s, but it is very, very good. Space themed progressive rock, if you're into that kind of thing. So yeah, check that out. He's touring America in the autumn, I think. So if you're in America, maybe if you like what you hear, you can see him live. Watched a couple of movies last week. Coincidentally, both were Woody Allen movies, so might as well just pick those because I like them both. One was Match Point, which I really liked. I think it had a really, really good opening line, which talks about luck and how people are reluctant to admit just how much luck plays a role in life, and it compares it to a ball hitting the top of a tennis net, and for a second it can go either cross the net or fall right back, and depends on your luck. So it's just very clever writing and imagery throughout that movie, which is really good. And then the other movie I watched was almost the opposite, which is called Hollywood Ending, which is about as stupid as Match Point was intelligent and deep. Hollywood Ending was about as stupid, but I really enjoyed it because the jokes were funny. Like no matter how stupid the movie was and the ending was, it was really well written and really funny. So yeah, I'm gonna go with those 2 movies as my picks. Yeah, I don't have a tech pick, so I'm just gonna call it there.
All right, good deal. I'm going to throw in some picks. I always start with a board game. The board game I'm going to pick is Camel Up. We had 4 couples we got together for my friend's birthday, and this was one of the games we played. It's a pretty simple game. Board Game Geek weights it at 1.5, which means that it's, your casual gamer can pick it up pretty easily and run with it. It ages 8 and up can play it. It takes about a half hour, and it's a camel race around a pyramid. And so you roll the dice and you move the camels. You bet on the camels. You also can reserve a space, and if a camel lands on it, then it'll move it forward or back, and you get money. At the end of each round, if you bet on the right camel, you get money. And then at the end, whoever picked the right camel to win the overall race. The first person to do it gets more money. The second person gets less. Third person gets less. You can bet on more than one camel. If you bet wrong at the end, then you lose a coin or $1 or whatever it is. I mean, that's essentially the whole game. You just play until one of the camels gets across the line, and then you finish the round. And the dice, you stick them in the top of the pyramid, and then you flip the pyramid over and push a little thing on the side, and it drops one of the dice. And whatever color the dice is, you move the camels. And then the only other rule is if you move a camel onto the same space as another camel, it goes on top of the stack of camels. And then if a camel underneath any of the, so if a camel has other camels on top of it, when it moves, and it moves with all the other camels on top of it too. And so anyway, it gets kind of interesting, betting and doing all the things there. But super fun game. If you're looking for a quick game, like I said, it plays up to 8 people. And so yeah, that was part of the reason why we were playing it with that group, right? Is because it kind of fit everybody in. So yeah, I'm gonna pick Camel Up as my pick for a board game. I'm in the middle of the last book of the Sword of Truth series by Terry Goodkind. And those, I've really, really enjoyed these books. The first one is called Wizard's First Rule. And so I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. But yeah, it's a fantasy. It's high fantasy. And I don't even know how to describe them to you. So just go pick them up. I think there was a TV series that they made out of it too, but I haven't watched it, and I don't know how close they stuck to the book. So if you've seen the TV series, and I don't know how good the context is there, but I'm going to pick that. I don't know that I have any technical picks, so I will just let Adrien and Marco do their picks. Adrien, do you want to go first?
Okay, I wasn't really prepared for this. I might go a bit off topics. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about the exact rule of the pick, but I'll talk about a recent passion that I had discovered. Uh, been doing quite a lot of sport recently and discovered CrossFit and IROX. I don't know if you are familiar with IROX. It's kind of a competition, a race of CrossFit. And just purchased some tickets for the next event in Bordeaux in November. And we are, and it has been quite amazing how I could progress in sport doing this, and how motivating. So if you are looking for something quite intense and to get back to sports, it's a nice challenge to put. The race isn't easy, and one of the hardest part nowadays is to get a ticket for some of those races, because it's very become very popular. But it's sounds quite challenging and nice, and that's a nice thing that I discovered recently. So that's my passion pick, I would say. And in terms of technical, what did I? Well, we are doing a lot of things with LLM, of course, nowadays. It's quite impressive how we are doing a lot of adaptive learning, and it's really impressive how we can do this very easily versus what we could do in the past.
Cool. And just to put it out there, the Hyrox is Hyrox. It took me a minute to find it on the Google. So awesome. Marco, what are your picks?
Yeah, I have one for music as well. One of my favorite DJs and producers, they have a residency now in a new club that just opened in Ibiza called Universe, and it's this new hyper club, what they call it. It's like space themed. It's like really big, but it's like really nice, and all is like custom built for that specific club. And they have like a new show called Holosphere, and it's like this holosphere with like visual LEDs on the inside and the outside of that sphere, and the DJ is performing in the like center of the sphere. So you get these really nice 3D effects, and it looks really awesome. And I want to go see a show of his, like when he's like doing his residency. It's like every Monday till September. So I really want to go see that. And if you are not familiar with his music, then check it out. And I guess for the technical pick, I have been quite enjoying a tool called Hotwire DevTools by a friend of mine. It's like a browser extension for Hotwire, so you can kind of inspect the stimulus controls, your turbo frames, and all of that. And there's a lot of stuff you can just see and debug using that in the browser. And I have been working on a native, what do you call it, like inspect panel in the browser. So you like next to your nodes or inspector in the DevTools, you also get like this new panel now for Hotwire. So this is like really cool to see how this came about. And yeah, that's called Hotwire DevTools, and it's available on all, I think, platforms where you can download extensions for browsers.
Awesome. All right. Well, how do people find you guys online if they want to connect?
For me, it's my first and last name .dev, Roth.dev.
Now, Adrien Poli, pretty much everywhere. Mostly on Twitter, a bit on Blue Sky. Then what else? Yeah, that's the two main things. And on GitHub.
All right. Cool. Well, thanks for coming, and thanks for putting this together, because it seems pretty handy and something that the community, I think, needed.
Awesome. Thank you much for having us.
All right. Well, folks, till next time, Max out.